part 2 is finally here. It's time to break down every class, including your favorite, and how they fit inside of the game in a PvP aspect, and a little bit of tips and tricks on each of them. Make sure to watch the end of the video if you want to figure out how to get your class to be the one that I focus an entire video on next. Appreciate you guys so much. Enjoy the video. Alright, so the first class we're going to talk about is going to be the warrior class. Now, when starting out PvPing on a warrior, there's a few things that you're going to need to know about the class before jumping in and starting to PvP. The first thing that you're going to need to learn is how Rage works and what it does for your class. So, Rage is a class-specific utility bar, like a mana, right? The way that Rage works for your class is whenever you're dealing damage to things, or killing things, or using a horn, your Rage bar goes up. When your Rage bar goes up, it allows you to use your abilities. The more Rage you have, the more abilities you get to use. So managing this Rage bar is absolutely vital to the success of playing a warrior. Like, this might be the only class in the game right now that it is almost a requirement to run a class item, which may be reworked in the future, but for right now, the only way to truly play a warrior efficiently is to constantly have war horns, which is the thing that you craft in your crafting bench for the warrior. If you don't have a war horn, the chances of you winning a fight against anybody is almost slim to none. The reasoning is because the objective of your class as a warrior is to close the gap and Unga Bunga. You want to be able to get in their face and make it so that they're stressed out that there's this big hulking monster in front of them. And all of the skills that allow a warrior to close that gap is inside of using Rage. So having those war horns is the utmost important for your class to be able to win in PvP. I've explained to you what the objective is of a warrior and how Rage works and how to use Rage. Let's go a little bit deeper into the skills that you're probably going to want to be using to accomplish the goals that the warrior wants. So in your first skill, you have this Iron Grip and the Iron Tether. I highly recommend right now using the Iron Tether because it's an AoE skill shot more than it is a direct skill shot, but they both kind of fill the same goal. And what that goal is, displacement. You're displacing the enemy. You're moving them where you want them to be, or guaranteeing their location, which allows you to close that gap and Unga Bunga. You'll see the following trend that is how to play a warrior appropriately. You want to run around a lot. You don't want to get hit. You want to tie them to the floor, and you want to run at them and beat them up. Like, that is the warrior gameplay. I recommend using Iron Tether. I think it works the best right now in the current state of the meta. It actually makes your class really, really strong. The other two abilities that you have that let you close this gap is Charge and Warpath. So if you choose to go with Charge, there is a pair of pants inside the Armorer that are called the Bull Rush Pants, and this increases your charge distance. So it essentially makes it so that you can close that gap better if you have those pants on. Warpath, on the other hand, is an ability that lets you hit it and go fast, right? And you can catch up to them, and there's perks that go with it that cause you to do critical strike damage. It's a very strong ability, but again, in order for this combo to work, I just want to constantly reiterate, you need war horns to play this class. Or you just need to kill a bunch of mobs before you get into the fight. Because if you start a fight with no Rage at all, you're probably losing that fight to just about anybody but a rogue. And the reason being is it just takes so many resources for a warrior to tie them down and chase them down that it is a requirement to have that Rage constantly going up. So war horns are number one to getting good with PvPing on a warrior. Two is learning that your objective is to tie them down and then chase them down and beat them up. Alright, fan favorite Wizzard is here to stay, and everybody has been showing a bunch of love on it. I'm going to give a brief overview on how to start PvPing with your wizard effectively. Surface value of a wizard, they seem to be very, very complex, and although there is quite a bit of depth to the class, once you really understand the flow of the character, it's not so hard to get used to. A couple things that you should know about the wizard before starting is your important metrics to pay attention to, which is your stamina. You want to make sure you don't stam out on this wizard because it's very dangerous when you do. Your charged power, which you want to make sure you can keep as much as possible, and I'll give you guys a little bit of a tip on how to do that as well. And the third one is making sure that you don't run out of mana. So the place that the wizard plays in the game essentially is like a mid-range nuke. If you are unseen and undetected into a fight and you start by absolutely dropping your combo, which we'll talk about in a little bit, you are going to one-shot just about anybody in the game. And if you don't one-shot them, you certainly make them have to reset. So your job as a wizard is to sneak in, sneak out, go undetected, blow somebody up, and your protection is their death. That's kind of how the wizard plays out. There are plenty of resources that a wizard has also to get away in certain situations, but really the main objective for the wizard is do as much damage as you can until your resources run out, and then reset to get your resources back. It's almost like a hit and run, but your hit is really, really hard. And even if you don't have those resources, there are still some things that you can do to preserve your position in the fights that are still useful without needing all of those resources. But for all intended purposes, the wizard is just a walking nuke. Now let's break down some of the skills and how to use them and what makes them this nuke. Let's break down the skills that I would recommend using if you're going to start playing a wizard and work your way around. The first one that I would recommend is Arclight Explosion. This is the one that puts a big AoE on the ground. And as you can see in this video, the minute it actually comes together and explodes, it also leaves a silence on the enemy. This pairs really well with Time Warp. If you can get the timing down, you can snap your fingers back instead of waiting for the Time Warp time to end, and force them into your silence. So you can force them back into your silence, disposition them, and then start unloading this massive amounts of damage on the unexpected victim. The other reason why I would use Time Warp, there's actually two other reasons. Time Warp is probably the strongest asset that a wizard has right now. It is an offensive ability, it's a defensive ability, and it is a supporting ability. Now, what I mean by that is offensively, you can use this to displace your enemy. If you displace your enemy, they're in a bad situation because they're not where they want to be. Defensively, you can use it to run away and force your enemy back into a position they don't want to be in. So you can force them offensively to where you want them to be and defensively where you want them to be. You can use Time Warp in those ways. When I say that it is a support skill, is when you are running low on your charged power and there's nothing around for you to hit, you can charge up a fireball, cast the Time Warp on yourself, charge up the fireball, and then attack it. And attacking your own Time Warp will give you more charged power. That is your class's damage, essentially, is charged power. So definite Time Warp here on the second skill. It pairs so well with everything. The other reason as well is because of these shoulder pieces, which is almost a pivotal piece to your kit. This allows Time Warp to successfully grant overload for a short duration once they've been Time Warped. And we'll go over to what overload is in a second, but you'll see why that's so strong. The third ability you're going to use is Overcharge. And what this ability does is if you ever see a wizard go purple, like in this picture, they snap their fingers and they get a full charged Fire Blast. A full charged Fire Blast hits very, very, very hard. So you can start to see where this combo's coming in, right? You're going to Time Warp them, you're going to bring them back, you're going to silence them, then you're going to explode them. Now, that is my favorite combo to play on a wizard because it just seems so unbelievably effective. Now, the reason why Overcharge over Overload is because of the shoulders. So what Overload does is it grants you a damage buff when it's on you. So normally you would cast it and it would stay on you and you would do 30% more damage. But because it's on your shoulder pads, the minute you Time Warp somebody back, you automatically get that 30% additional damage that allows you to overcharge into fireballs. So Again, the class does have a specific style that you want to play. It is a mobile walking nuke. Find your way in, nuke, get the hell out, and then start rebuilding your resources by getting more charge power on your own time warp, whatever. Here, which I know everybody is so excited about, it is the Rogue. The Rogue class is probably the most controversial class in Legacy, in terms of it does what it does really well. And some people just don't like what it does. And that's okay. It's okay for that to be the case, because the Rogue class, for all intended purposes, has always filled its specific role in Legacy really, really well. The goal of the Rogue is essentially that of an assassin. It is almost typecast in that way with every video game, and in Legacy, it's really not a whole lot different. So what you're going to want to do as a Rogue is you're going to want to hit and run as much as possible. You're going to want to take as little damage as you can while outputting a little bit of damage here and there forever until you melt them down. There are some opportunities on the Rogue for you to completely all in when there's enough blood in the water, I would say, right? Once they're a low enough health, that's when you're really going to start initiating. Until that point, your job is to essentially whittle them down, waste their resources, right? Rogues are very good at wasting other classes' stamina, which is almost what you want to do, because the minute that any class is stammed out in front of a rogue, they have the ability to just forever stagger them and keep them from doing anything but taking all of your damage. So what I like to do when I play a rogue specifically is very much try to get them poisoned, try to get them diseased, try to proc some type of ability on them that causes damage over time or debuffs to the class. Because essentially, as a rogue, you're constantly thinking in your head, I am a predator and I'm snuffing out my prey. But instead of your prey being like a tiny mouse, your prey is a giant bear or a bald eagle that can slit your throat, right? Like, there is a predator mindset while also needing to be protective. You constantly want to apply pressure the best way that you can. In the background video, you'll see me constantly hitting him with abilities that he's displacing. He's playing around his traps really well, but every time I find a position of weakness in him, I am taking advantage of it as best I can. These darts that I'm throwing out are poison darts. If I hit him with enough poison darts, I proc poisoning on them, which poison will stop them from healing 50%. So all of their healing is cut by 50%. Rogues do a really good job working around these little pieces to the kit to make it work really well. All right, so a little bit of a deep dive here into the abilities of a rogue. Might go a little longer than the other ones because there is just so much to unpack with this class. As I mentioned, the skill ceiling is very high on this. As you can see, you have a mark ability, and the mark ability either poisons or hemorrhages or diseases. And the way it works is this is your one ability, you apply it to the person you're fighting, and then all of your other subsequent attacks will cause the buildup to happen and eventually to proc. So Poison Claw I personally like because the faster that I can get poisoning on somebody is really the best for me. If you're very skilled at the game, you might be able to pull off just using paralyzed darts and like an infected claw to proc 2 debuffs rather than 1. But I recommend using Poison Claw just because I want to proc this poison as fast as possible. It allows me to keep resetting and healing up while they are struggling to heal. You're almost just starving them of their resources and their life, essentially. The second one is Phantom Veil. Now, if you're just starting the game, you don't actually unlock Phantom Veil until level 18. This is obviously subject to change, but for the time, this is the most important skill that you want on this bar. Until then, I recommend using Shroud. I would say probably don't use this ability unless you're trying to get away from a fight. This is a very get me out button instead of a get me in button. to where Phantom Veil gives you a little bit more of that this is my out button and this is my in button, and this could be my in button to get out. Like, Phantom Veil is a much higher skill cap. It's overall just better, so I recommend using the Phantom Veil, but really, the Phantom Dagger right now is almost a requirement for the class. What this does is it allows you to throw a dagger onto the enemy, and once it is on the enemy, you can re-hit the button. It'll teleport you behind them, and it will root them in place. This is a really good skill to pair with daggers right now, for the reason that daggers followed up with that ability has what's called Cheap Shot. And Cheap Shot is the weapon exclusive that lets you throw a cheap shot in front of you and stun them for, I believe it's 4 seconds right now. So if you have them stunned for 4 seconds, it allows you to do a individual heavy attack to their back, or apply the poison and hold your right mouse button to guarantee a poison proc. And then really after that, your objective is to run around until you can do that same combo over and over again. Right now, Dagger Rogue feels very strong against a lot of classes, as long as you're playing it the way it's intended. Sneaky, get out, get in. Hit them hard, run away. That is the whole assassin style of the Dagger Rogue. Now, if you were to look at like the Sword Rogue, there's also a really fun playstyle where you have a reset option where these swords, if you're invisible, let you Blade Rush again, and you have a tool that gives you a smoke bomb that lets you go invisible in the smoke bomb. So you can Blade Rush out of the smoke bomb, go invisible from your Phantom Veil, Blade Rush them back into your smoke bomb, Blade Rush back out of your smoke bomb, and dance around with these Blade Rushes that will eventually just slowly whittle them down. Even though it is a different weapon, the mindset of playing with a sword is almost the same as a dagger. Waste their resources, wait until you have a full all-in moment, which is usually when they're stammed out, and poison them as fast as possible using your mark skill and your darts, and then find your all-in, and then kill them. That's essentially the way to play the rogue in Legacy. Next, we're going to be talking about the Hunter, and the Hunter is the sniper class in Legacy, Steel, and Sorcery. And just like the other classes that we've discussed so far, there is a specific place in the game that this class will play, and that is the Slippery Sniper. The class is able to be pretty slippery in the pocket, playing around some of its abilities that we'll talk about in a little bit, but the class also has the ability to pretty much fly away from danger, as well as evade and run very fast to a safe place. The damage that the Hunter can put out while being very safe is kind of the nature of the class. You don't quite do as much spike damage as the Wizzard, but you are ultimately all the safer, because you are the only true long-range class in the game. Your objective is to never let the space disappear. Imagine if you've ever played League of Legends or a game like that where your abilities have like a giant range around them. At any given time, you need to know what your matchup is and what their skills are to a degree to be able to play this class super efficiently, because you need to know what your threats are. You melt very fast. You are the second squishiest, if not the squishiest, right now class in the game. The minute any of these other classes gets their hands on you, all of your strengths go out the window. So there's a lot of things that you have that allow you to be squirmy, and you can play aggressively in certain situations as long as you know what the AoE range is on the abilities. For instance, I'm fighting a warrior in the clip behind you. As you'll see, I'm constantly keeping just far enough away from him to where he can't output all of his damage on me. I am playing with a longbow, but I'm not 700 miles away because I don't have to be. I can dance in a pocket with a warrior except that point where I died. I can dance in the pocket with a warrior forever, as long as I respect where his damage comes from. And that's kind of the essence of the hunter in general. You kind of need to know what you're up against. You need to know how to not get killed by it, because you have the tools on this class to take care of everything. So, for instance, if I was fighting a priest, right? The priest has a little bit longer ranged skills. My goal when fighting a priest is to imagine that invisible wall around him of where his skills can go and stay just outside of that. And what I'm doing when I'm fighting a class like that is I'm a little bit further away. I don't use my bramble traps as much. I'm using cyclone much more, and I'm keeping the distance as much as I possibly can so I can maximize my positioning. Because if one of those mid-range classes gets up on you, a wizard or a priest, they're going to hurt you more than you can hurt them in a fast period of time. So you have to make sure you're safer than them, and the way you do that is just by kiting and running. So the hunter class has a pretty high skill cap in the sense that it's requiring you to know a lot about a lot of other classes to efficiently play this in PvP. There are a couple things that you can do to what I would call noob stomp if you're new to the class, and it's essentially just using Cyclone and going ham. But let's break down the skills and show you a little bit more about that in depth. Alright, so with the Hunter, I didn't really mention the swiftness or the mana on him, and that's just because right now it's not the most important factor of the class like it is on a couple of the other classes. It does do some things, but it's not like super important. You don't really need to know much about it to play the class well at a degree right now that matters. Obviously, mana is mana. You'll run out of it if you spam stuff. So when you get your seeds, the seed bombs that you use, I've always been a big fan of either using seed bomb or flying seed bomb, but spore bomb is also a usable skill. These you can actually attack with your weapon and blow them up sooner. Keep that in mind. Little quick tip there is if you want them to blow up, if somebody's hiding around a corner, throw a bomb, hit it with the bow, it'll blow up instantaneous rather than waiting the time. The second one, I prefer Bramble Trap just because of how strong it is right now, in my opinion, but it's always subject to change. Even last season when it was different, it still played a similar role. So I'm pretty confident that Bear Trap will be around for quite a long time. And what the Bear Trap does is it opens up those roots that obviously snares the enemy in it, and it starts proccing nature damage, and it starts building hemorrhage. And hemorrhage essentially is bleeding. So once hemorrhage is procced all the way and it pops, it does percent health damage. And then they're also taking that nature damage on top. It's very chippy. It's very chip damage. I use it heavily when I'm fighting rogues and warriors. This is some of those tools that I said allow me to fight in the pocket. They're snared constantly and they're taking damage constantly. So I'm okay with fighting in there because I'm giving them this sense of safety or the sense that they can win because I'm so close to them. But in reality, I'm always right outside that range of where they can hit me, and I'm constantly ticking them down with damage until they perish. So I am a big fan of Bramble Traps against rogues and warriors. The other traps are usable, like Shock Beetle is actually kind of good against the mid-rangers as well as the close ones, but I don't use it a whole lot. I really just like the Bramble Trap personally, but there's definitely a lot of usability in Shock Beetle and Bear Trap if you play around with them. I'm just really comfortable on Bramble Trap, and I feel like it's one of the easier ones to get used to because of how strong it is. The other thing is Sentinel Cyclone. Cyclone is that ability that I'm pressing in the background of those videos where I am running through it and jumping away. This is your safety ability. This ability allows you to position yourself in favorable positions, whether it's vertically or distance-wise. So if you're facing a rogue or a warrior and you want to be ultimately safe, go on a roof. Cyclone away. You have so many options to get away from them that it should be frustrating for them to want to chase you if you don't want to fight. Now, if you're confident and you want to fight, you could be in that pocket, or you can even play the range game like you do with those other mid-classes until they get close to you, obviously. Sentinel Cyclone is probably the strongest ability in this category right now. The other two are actually usable and strong as well. If you're confident enough in your ability to get away. I would not recommend using Sentinel Strike or Sentinel Call with a longbow. If you're using the longbow, I always recommend using Cyclone because it really takes away the negative of having that full heavy draw, to where if you're using a medium bow or a swift bow, Sentinel Strike becomes a valid skill to use, as well as Sentinel Call. But even if I'm using those other weapons, I'm still using this Bramble Trap on melee. And I'm still using whatever seed I can, see value in. I like the Flying Seed Bomb personally because it will stick to them if you hit them with it. It blows up. You can still hit it around the angles. It has a designed path. The Seed Bomb has more of like a projectile. You don't know where it's going to go, and it's inconsistent. Like, I prefer I know where it's going to be, and I hit it. With the Hunter class, hitting your shots is super important. If you come from an FPS background, you'll probably enjoy this class because if done right, this is probably the strongest class in Legacy, Steel, and Sorcery. All right, and the last one we're going to talk about is my personal favorite, the Priest. I have about 500 hours on this class. It is by far my favorite. I love the way that it plays. It's very unique in a lot of ways, in the sense that there's actually multiple play styles of this class in some ways. For instance, when you're playing the warrior, I told you that your goal was to get in their face as fast as possible, chase them down, beat them up. If you're a rogue, you want to hit and run. If you're a hunter, you want to stay outside their range. If you're a wizard, you want to engage, hit hard, disengage, right? Overview, all of those classes have like a really set play style. And it's really easy to dictate what that playstyle is. Now, when you get to a priest, it's the first and only class, I think, that plays differently depending on what you want to do. You can choose to play a sword and shield in a solo game to where your objective is to poke close to them and eventually go in for a full kill. Or a staff in solos where it's like, never let them get close to me, keep them at a distance, stun them, and slowly whittle them down. It's the only class in the game that not only has a ranged weapon, has a melee weapon. So it's unique in the sense that you can play it a couple different ways. I personally love the staff, so I'm going to be talking mostly about how I play the staff priest because I don't really like the sword and board. I'm sorry. I think it's a really annoying playstyle personally. It's very strong right now. I'm still going to go over how you can win with that in PvP. But as far as the priest goes, for me, my heart's always with the staff. So I'm going to go over a little bit of both, but I'm going to kind of lean into the staff here mostly. With the priest, as you can see in the background, all I'm trying to do is find ways to stun him and then deal damage after he's stunned. I kite around, I dance, I make sure that I'm safe, and I look for my opportunity to stun and then hit him with a star. And that's essentially the playstyle of the priest. All right, so when breaking down the priest's skills, the thing to know is that your scepter and your staff both have a heal ability, and your sword and shield has an AoE damaging ability that gives you increased damage. Overall, not too much flashy stuff there, pretty basic. Your one ability, the best one to use here is Mirror of Protection, because there's no other skill. I almost never use this, by the way. The mana is better spent with your other two abilities. This is pretty niche. You can use it against some classes like a hunter or maybe even a wizard if they're directly in front of you, but it's a little bit more niche, and I'm much rather use my stars or my Heaven's Fury. Now, the basic combo to this class is dropping a Heaven's Fury or the end of your Heaven's Ward to stun the target. And once that target is stunned, you'll have these runes placed on the ground here. Those runes deal a damage over time. It has a damage over time aspect to it that'll hit them for like 40 holy damage. But really the big purpose of that is you get a trait that allows you to explode a star inside of that range and guarantee a crit. And when you guarantee a crit with a star inside of your runes, it spawns you a spark, which is an object that gives you 10% more damage if you pick it up and silence the enemy if they pick it up. So as far as the stars go, the decision is either between Gleaming Star and Guided Star. For the reasons I just told you about trying to get as many sparks as I can, I use the Guided Star because it gives me more control over what I'm doing. It is the higher skill cap version of the class. You can use the Gleaming Star. It works perfectly fine. It's very effective. It's very good at causing stamina drain on your opponent, because they have to evade out of it or it's going to hit them, or they block it and they lose shield pips. I like the Guided Star because it allows me to guarantee a spark spawn, as well as I can bait stamina with this as well. It does a lot of damage. It's just all around, in my opinion, the better, deeper skill. Heaven's Fury, again, I would say that this is the higher skill cap ability. There's a auto-targeting function with it. There's a hold function with it that lets you choose where it goes, and it comes down faster. And then there's the Heaven's Ward ability that obviously everybody probably has seen or faced at least once if you've played the game. That gives you immortality and lets you move faster, and at the end of it, explodes in an AoE stun ability, and then essentially you beat them up after that, right? Heaven's Ward has some counterplay to it. The longer that it's in the meta, the more likely it is to be countered. It's also in a very strong point right now, and it's subject to being changed as being a new ability. So this one is a toss-up. I always would recommend, no matter what, to use Heaven's Fury. It has so much more skill expression. The skill cap is significantly higher. If you're really good with Heaven's Fury, it doesn't matter what your opponent has, you'll beat them with Heaven's Ward if your skill is high enough with the Heaven's Fury. And that goes with Sword and Shield, Scepter, and Staff. I would probably recommend using Guided Star and Heaven's Fury exclusively for the Priest on any weapon set, just because of the skill cap on both of them, and the expression you have with any of the weapons is really high. Big fan of those two skills. So much for watching the video. It's a little bit longer than initially I wanted, but all the information inside of it is so vitally important that it almost felt right to leave it all in. If this video has helped you, give me a like and a subscribe. It means the world to me. The channel's almost at 500 subscriptions, which is kind of what my goal has been for quite some time. Thank you guys so much for getting me this close. If you want me to break down these classes even further, leave a comment about what class you want me to go over in depth specifically. Whatever I get the most comments on, I'm going to start breaking down into the actual deep dive of each class for the PvP aspect of it. Thank you guys again so much. Much love. Come check me out on Twitch. I am live every day of the week. This is the name of my character, is my Twitch. The support has been overwhelming from you guys. It's been fantastic. These videos are going to continue because of it. Much love. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. All right. Have a good one.